Andreas, I know a little bit about you, but people that might be listening might not know anything about you. So it'd be nice to get a little bit of background. Who is Andreas Lagopoulos?
Coach and founder of Uncharted Kite Sessions. I am a kiteboarding coach and a rider, and I take people from beginners to pros to better kiting skills.
So that's how you identify yourself.
Oh, how I identify myself and what I do for a living aren't necessarily the same thing. I identify myself as just someone looking to make other people's lives better, more enriched, better experiences, and lead a happy, simple life with a puppy on the beach. Pretty simple.
But this whole, okay, so you're a kiteboard, you have the kiteboarding business of adventure trips, and you also are a coach yourself, though how did you weren't doing this forever? Like what were you doing
No, I
before
haven't
this?
been a coach forever. I've been a coach. I've had Uncharted Kite Sessions for the last 7 years, but I've been an athlete forever, and I have been a coach for a long time in different sports. I've been an athlete since I started swimming competitively at 8 years old. Went from national level swimming to national level water polo to competing for national level triathlon, and then raced World Cup mountain bike until I was almost 25. So from 8 years old to 25, I was always at a high level of sport, always had high level coaches. So I've had Olympic level coaching, so I can appreciate what a good coach does. And then as I got higher in sport, it's just a natural progression. You mentor people below you, athletes below you, younger athletes, because they just naturally look up to you, and you're sharing a pool with them, or you're riding a bike with them, or you're out training with people who are younger. So you just naturally learn to coach them. And then when I moved on from being an athlete, I was in restaurants and hotels for many years. And then I was a carpenter building custom homes for many years. And the whole time that I was still doing the adulting life, I still played high level water polo in Montreal. So I was always still involved with sports and coaching other players. And it was just a natural progression to become a full-time coach and embrace my passion more, which was kiteboarding and just being out in the ocean and sharing experiences with other people.
And how did you, okay, so I didn't know about your 8 to 25-year-old life of like being
Sports.
sports. Yeah, I didn't know that. Because I remember you mentioned to me a little bit about the hotel side that you're working in, sort of that industry.
Yeah.
And also, I think you were mentioning something about kitchen.
Well, when I was 8 to 25, I had three things in my life. I had family, sport, and work, which the work I knew was my family job. So
Okay.
my dad is a restaurateur for what he does for his passion and fun, but by trade, he's an architect.
Okay.
So my entire lifetime was training for competitions, going to school, or working either in the family restaurant or in the family construction site. So these were the three things I learned in my youth and then carried those through into adulthood. So when I was 25, it was the start of extreme sports. So the Bobby Browns of skiing, who make millions of dollars a year, and the Shaun Whites, and those were few and far between. Extreme sports was not the payroll paycheck that it is today. Yeah. So when I finally stopped doing high-level sports, it's essentially because of a paycheck. There were very few people. Red Bull didn't exist. Red Bull Sports didn't exist. I made my bulk of my money through winning competitions, through getting sponsorships. But sponsorships in the day were, your gear was essentially free. They didn't really give you much beyond that.
Yeah.
And as a national level athlete in Canada, you get to compete for Canada. You become a carded athlete. You can get some money for that from the government of Canada. But essentially, I was living on.
Did you get that though? The Canada support?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Canada support, because I competed in mountain biking for Canada. And so, but that's $1,000 a month,
Yeah.
It doesn't really add up to a tremendous flow of cash. So At 25, I had the choice of becoming a professional, and then went into restaurants and hotels, which I knew well from doing it my whole life, and then did that for a decade. And then had always loved doing construction, was doing that on the side for fun anyways, and just naturally flowed from one into the others. I got more skilled in construction, got a project management degree after my university degree. And so I have a project management certificate, and it just, in project management, taking my courses, I met a lot of people in construction.
Okay.
And so it's, you shake a lot of hands, open a lot of doors. But yeah.
So I didn't know you went to, I was guessing you probably went to university. Most people that are, I don't know what's that generation, but let's say people that are now, let's say 40 years old, 50 years old, plus most of them went to university and actually got a degree. I think now it's like the younger guys that it's not as common. Like some people don't get it at all and some people get it. But so that university degree then I guess meant something, like it helped back in the day to get things moving.
No, yes, and no. So I have a degree
Uh,
in psychology and conflict resolutions.
Wepa.
So am I going to be a psychologist? No, but
Yeah,
it helps me in my coaching because I understand people really well.
yeah,
So it allows me to alter my coaching and how I perceive people. Conflict resolution degree also has been very helpful in negotiations, whether it's for my business, friendships, relationships, to understand people. So that's, I didn't take the degree, I didn't get the degree to become a professional in that field.
yeah,
I was drawn to those majors because of just understanding humans. I like understanding humans and how they tick.
yeah,
And the biggest thing I would say I got out of my degree was learning how to communicate properly. When you, especially in psychology, you write a lot of papers, right? You
yeah,
write a lot of analysis of behaviors, of whatever. And so to finally get your ideas out on paper properly and to write something that's succinct, specific, and that can make sense, that's the biggest thing I learned in university, is how to get a thought out properly, make my thoughts clear without over speaking or over writing. So
that's why you're a pretty good writer, I'm guessing.
yeah, exactly. It
Yeah,
definitely helped with writing. I always enjoyed writing. When I was a kid, I used to do a lot of creative writing, but writing 4 years worth of university psychology papers definitely
helped out.
teaches you to write a lot better. And same thing, writing conflict resolution papers, how to, essentially most of my courses in conflict resolutions were uh, role-playing scenarios. So you'd always break up into groups and you'd have someone in the other class who was the arbitrator and you would be the union boss, and you'd have a theoretical problem that you'd have to solve, and then you'd have to write a paper on it and why you come to these conclusions. And so is university good? Hard to say. Should I have stayed in Whistler and not gone back to university and followed my dream there? That's the question of the day, because I actually quit. I went to high school, left for 5 years, and then went back to university. So
Okay, so you're like working you're just working for those 5 years after high school,
I
and then
was a professional athlete. I was just
professional
training
athlete.
and racing and training and racing. I lived in Whistler. I during the days I either downhill skied or cross country skied, depending on what I wanted for my leg strength. So cross country skiing was cardio, was great for mountain biking.
Yeah.
Downhill skiing, obviously, was a lot more fun,
Hmm.
and it provided you with the power. So if you ski downhill ski, I like to ski downhill no matter whether with the terrain and super G turns all the time. And so that provides a tremendous amount of load on your legs, but it's like doing squats, like doing heavy squats.
Yeah.
So when you do a lot of heavy, hard skiing, it gives you that power, that boost that you need when mountain biking. So I would live in Whistler in the winters and train and tune skis at night, because living as a pro athlete back then wasn't much. So I would just tune skis at night
Yeah.
on the midnight tuning ski shift, and then as soon as
What
the
does
spring would come,
what does
skis,
tuning
downhill
skis
skis.
tuning skis do? Like, is it because I'm not a skier, so is it just like waxing them and all this, or is it something
Everything.
else?
So I worked in a ski tuning shop in a basement of one of the hotels at the Fairmont Hotel in Whistler. We had in the garage so in the main floor of the hotel there was a ski shop, and they
Yeah.
had rentals and sales and whatever. And then in the basement they had a ski tuning equipment. So Ski tuning machines, the ones I would use were called winter staggers, and they were like $60,000 machines.
Yeah.
And they did a combination of grinding the bases, grinding the edges, resetting the bases. And so depending on the shape of the ski, if a ski is like in really good shape, all you have to do is do a light grinding or maybe a stone grinding to set a pattern in the base. So bases of skis get patterns, which when you ski over something, it melts water just enough so you get a flow of water under your ski. So depending on the pattern that you put in the base will flow the water differently and it'll make your ski perform differently. So,
Interesting.
and then the edges and
Do
how they're
snowboards have that as well,
yeah,
or no?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
the same. All right.
exactly. Yeah, they're all tuned the same. And then the sharpness of your edge and how you detune it and the length. So there's a lot to tuning the ski. And then there's repairs. People hit rocks, they tear out an edge. So you're doing everything from just fine touch tuning to full ski repairs. And so most people, the ski hill closes at 4 o'clock. People come back from après ski. They drop off their skis between 4 and 6. And I would work from 6 p.m. till midnight in a basement with heavy metal playing on the machine and like airplane earphones on because the machines are quite loud after a while, and just tuning skis and eating Subway subs until went home. Get up at 6 a.m. and go for first chair of on Whistler, ride powder from first chair until lunch, go home, eat some more lunch, take a little nap, get up, go back to ski tuning.
So that was like an interesting time in a way, an exciting time.
That was
Or in the moment, it didn't seem like it. In the moment, it just seemed like a grind.
no, not at all. That was if I'm on the path that I'm on now with Uncharted Kite Sessions.
Yeah.
Because of my life changed in this direction to come on Uncharted, but this is an extension of the life that I had in Whistler. It's exactly that. My boss at Whistler Backroads is the founder of X Games.
Okay.
So Tess Sewell is a great guy. Worked for him for one summer, and he went off to Aspen, started X Games, and so I was with the forefront runners of extreme sports. And unfortunately, as you say, people over 40 years old have university degrees. It's because they are pushed towards that direction, right?
Yeah.
Because the opportunities of sports and marketing didn't exist in those days. So it was like, well, you've gone as far as you can as an athlete. You're 25 years old. You're pretty old for an athlete. Whereas now athletes go till they're well into their 30s.
Yeah.
But when I was 25 years old, 25 was like, okay, you're old for an athlete. Your body's going to be worn out. So Whistler was the start. I have so many friends in Whistler still who have mountain bike companies, who have ski companies, who are the first people,
the pioneers,
the guys who started X Games, the guys who changed pro extreme sports. So I love those years in Whistler. I wish some of me wishes I never spent those 15 years in between Whistler and here doing other things. But life gives you that, and I can do my job well now because of the experiences I've had in hotels, in restaurants, in university. So
yeah, it's I guess it's interesting in a way. Like when you sort of look back on it, you're like, what happens if you'd have taken left, or what happens if you'd have taken right? And
100%, that was a massive crossroads in my life, and I'm happy that I got back onto the path that I'm on. I really enjoyed the professional life living in Montreal, and had a woodworking company after restaurants, opened restaurants that had been top 50 in the world in Condé Nast. So I reached the top level of hotel and restaurants, and I really enjoyed it. Montreal is one of the most amazing cities in the world if you're in that milieu of dining and entertainment. There's one, New York, Paris. Few cities come close to Montreal, especially
is
Montreal.
Miami considered in that list as well?
For sure, Miami's in that list. Montreal's a booming town, But those are the handful of cities around the world that are really spectacular. So I don't regret any of that by any means. I had the greatest time in the world. So yeah, it's been a fun life so far.
And with that, with everything that's happened in your life, and then those 15 years of sort of working, what made you do the shift? Like, what made you change to where you are now? Anything in specific, or
I stepped on a rockfish, got paralyzed, lost a year and a half of my life, and had to learn how to walk again. And so that sort of changed everything really quick.
Where'd you wait? So you stepped on a rockfish, like a stonefish, the same thing,
Yeah, stonefish, exactly same thing.
and that thing got you paralyzed.
Yeah, through a series of unfortunate events, it poisoned me, and then it actually became a bone infection in my spine that was misdiagnosed and deteriorated to the point where I had serious complications. So
This country, or in which country?
no, in Montreal,
In
I stepped on
Montreal.
a rockfish while kiteboarding in Cuba, and was flying back in the day, 5-line kite, and I dropped my kite and it flipped over on itself, and the center line went through because when a kite
Yeah.
inverts itself on a 5-line, you can't relaunch it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I had to self rescue, pulled in my kite, and while walking across the reef, stepped on a stonefish, punctured my foot, got poisoned. Uh, Went through that actually pretty fine. My foot flared up and I was pretty sick for a couple of days, not feeling
Yeah.
great, but then that actually went back, and it was just a weird series of events that set in a entry point for a bacterial infection, which set in slowly. And then I was back in Montreal working, and my back just got worse and worse and started getting more and more sore. And I kept inquiring about it, and went to my osteopath, said, yeah, something's not right here. My chiro said something wasn't right. My massage therapist said something wasn't right. And then I'd go to the hospital, and they would look at me, and they wouldn't touch me. They would just take blood tests and go, no, blood work looks fine, you're fine. And they'd send me home. And this happened slowly and over months, literally, until I couldn't walk. And then I had such an infection on my spine that it finally pushed through my anterior cavity on my spine and pushed on my spinal cord and cut off the signal one day. And then I ended up in the hospital for an MRI, and they finally took an MRI, and they're like, wow, you got a growth the size of a football on your spine. And yeah, you think?
Yeah.
So then life started over.
So you said that the doctors only did blood work, they didn't touch you. You think if they would have touched you, it would have been different? Like they would have felt around or something? Like how
100%.
would they have been able to prevent something?
You could actually feel the growth on my spine.
Gotcha.
So that's how I knew I had something. I had my chiropractor, my massage therapist would massage me, be like, this isn't your kidneys. I don't know what this is, but this is like not your kidneys. It's not like any of your organs back here, but you're getting a push on your spine here. And so my infection was quite unique in that I had quite unique blood work. The normal markers for infection were normal. They were within normal markers.
Yeah.
So it was only when I took final specialty blood work for what are called CRP and ESR, which are a protein in your blood, that I was 1,000 times the average level. And they were like, oh, geez, you.
So that means you're trying to fight something off.
Yeah. Your CRP and ESR should be 9 or should be like 12/6 or something like that. And mine was 1,800/900. So it was a unique situation. Once they saw that, they were like, holy crap. And then they did a MRI, saw that, and then they wanted to remove my spine after that. No, that was interesting.
Jesus. Imagine if that would have happened.
Yeah, no, that was my diagnosis, was to remove my spine because it had been so infected and replace it with plastic blocks and put me in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
Yeah, not my solution. Not my type of solution.
Exactly. So it's always important to be your own advocate with medical doctors. They know what they're doing, and they don't know what they're doing at the same time. They're very learned. I wouldn't be here today walking without my doctor's help, for sure. Once the infection was figured out and the type of infection it was, without antibiotics, there's no homeopathic medicine that would have gotten me healthy. It was antibiotics, it was medical help. But it's beyond that. It's the healing process that you have to undertake in yourself that modern medicine isn't quite so up to par on, and you can learn. Like when I was originally diagnosed, they were going to remove my spine, and it went from removing my spine to never walking again to when I would start to walk, well, you'll never walk properly. Well, you'll never do this. And every step I took forward, they're like, well, that's as far as you're going to heal. And I'm like, no, you could probably do a little bit better. And I
Hmm.
would heal more. And they're like, well, it's as far as you're going to heal. So have faith that your body can heal. Push it.
So it's like you need to, well, I guess for us, it's, or at least for myself, I sort of realize it's like you need to feel your body out and then sort of like take what someone tells you and then relate it back to what you're feeling and then sort of make your own little diagnosis from that, you know? And for sure, the antibiotics and some modern medicines can help, but that's not always the case. You know, it's like you need to, because imagine if that, I've heard that happen before, right? Where people are like, oh, they just remove stuff. You know, it's like the easy, for them, they're just like trying to find easy solutions that they can do within an operation or whatever, you know, and they're like, oh, we just remove it and you're sitting. And then they say they did a good job because you're sitting and you're alive still. But they don't
It's
really try
a,
to,
it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy with medicine, and having, for a couple of months I stayed in the hospital after the paralysis in my legs and saw the average patient and what they go through and what they believe.
yeah,
And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because doctors will say, well, this is what you have, this is what you can expect, and this is your recovery. And so
yeah,
people get to that recovery point, and then they say, well, this is as far as the doctor says I'm going to get, so I guess this is it. And they just sort
yeah.
of sit in that spot. And
Did your doctor
recovery,
push you further or no? Or
oh
your
no, my
doctor?
doctors, my neurologist, my spinal surgeon were all like, don't do yoga. Like, it's a mistake. And I'm like, well, have you ever
Yeah,
done yoga? They're like, no, but don't do it. And I'm like, well, if you've never done it, you don't know what I can do.
yeah,
So um, I was told I would never recover from what I've had. Good luck or bad luck, I've actually had many other injuries. In being a ski racer, a mountain bike racing, you get a lot of injuries. So I've already blown my ACLs a few times. I've crushed my hand. I've had some obstacles in recovery in my past. So I knew that the body can recover. It's just a question of pushing it. And recovery is painful and recovery is hard. Many days in recovery, I swore like a pirate at the pain.
yeah,
Uh, but that's the only way you are going to get to your goal and get to where you want to get to, because your body is unbelievable in how it can recover if you let it, if you give it the food, the energy, the right techniques. Whether for my recoveries, I've done everything from the master cleanse to float tanks to massages to acupuncture, uh,
which one worked the
osteopath,
best? Or
everything. They all work to the
yeah,
point. When I was really recovering with my spinal injury, a couple times a week I would go for a 2-hour massage and walk straight out of there and go into a 2-hour float tank, a 2-hour sensory
yeah,
deprivation tank, because it's been studied that 1 hour in a deprivation tank is equivalent to 1 week's worth of REM sleep. And REM sleep is when you secrete all your hormones, so your organ building or growth building hormones come out in your REM sleep. So if you can do 1 hour of float tank, that's a week's worth of recovery. So I would do 4 hours of float tank a week in order, and straight after a massage. So straight after a stimulation of that area
yeah.
with an ultrasound machine during the massage, I'd go straight into a float tank and just float there for 2 hours. And all these things helped. All these things were massive contributors to recovery. Recovery also costs money, unfortunately. I
Yeah.
would
How did you
trade.
fund that?
I went through all my savings, and then as a carpenter, it was quite fortuitous. My massage therapist was also a landlord and had a bunch of Airbnb condos all over Montreal. So I would trade her carpentry work for massages. So I tiled all of her bathrooms, did a bunch of kitchens, I did stuff like that. Because I didn't have the energy to go back onto the construction site full time
Yeah,
because my back was still so sensitive. But I could put out 3-4 hours in the day and just go in. And she was in no rush on new projects, so we
yeah.
just trade that off. And
Did the
Under
massage therapist also have the sensory deprivation tank, or that was two different
no,
businesses? Oh,
two
okay,
different businesses. Yeah, she
gotcha.
went to a place called Ovarium in Montreal and had a tank there twice a week. And,
Did they help you out at all with your
well, they just
like?
helped providing the tank.
No, I'm saying like, did they say like, oh, because of your unique situation, like we're gonna give you extra discounts or anything like that, or they just saw you as like another number?
My story was my story to me. I didn't go to anyone and ask
For
uh,
extra help, like you
for
didn't, you
extra help.
managed. Gotcha,
I did. It was my fight. It was my challenge to overcome. It wasn't anybody else's. I wasn't looking for any handouts for anyone.
gotcha.
So I just did what I did, and it was on me. So
So that this accident was at the end of that 15-year period then of working,
yeah, not
and
even
then
15 years, more like 12. Yeah.
after, so you had this accident a year and a half sort of out of commission.
Yeah.
That's a year and a half. Are you calculating after the diagnosis, or from the beginning of the Cuba, like after the Cuba trip to
From
you being,
from when I got put in the hospital.
oh shit, okay, so
Yeah.
it's a long
So
time.
it took me 18 months to get back to work. 18 months to be physically strong enough. For more than a month, I was in the hospital. I lost 70 pounds. I was down to just over 100 pounds.
Jesus.
Yeah, I thought the scale in the hospital was originally wrong when I could first start to walk again. I would
Yeah.
walk down the hallway and of the hospital, and the hallway was like 100 meters long, and it would take me about 45 minutes to walk it. And at the far end, they would have a scale that you could step on. And the first time I stepped on it, I thought it was wrong.
Yeah.
And so I stepped off and I asked the orderly, this big guy, to come over. I'm like, can you step on this scale for me?
Yeah.
I think this is wrong. And he steps on. He's like, no, 255. And I step back on. I'm like, yeah, 107. Yeah,
And how
that's
much do you
wrong.
weigh now?
How much I weigh? I weigh 170, just under 170.
Under 170?
Yeah, about
Uh,
168 or so. So back then I was a little bit larger. I was also younger
yeah.
and had more fitness. I didn't lose it all. So yeah, I was, before I'd fully gotten hospitalized, I was pretty incapacitated those last several weeks, and then spent a month completely incapacitated in hospital, and then spent several months barely walking.
And did
So
you have like any sort of help going through this, like family members, friends,
yeah,
whatever?
once friends, it was, that's when you truly know who your friend, and becomes crystal clear in moments like that. Who's important to you, not what's important to you in terms of work. Oh, I'll get that dog.
Yeah, I need a 1 second. Actually, 1 sec. Go, baby. All right. Now every time she hears something, she'll go for it.
Yeah, that's the point of having a dog. I don't think my little
Exactly.
puppy's going to kill anybody, but he's just going to give the alarm signal. Someone's
Yeah.
here.
No, but so you figured out sort of, and those friends that were there for you while this all happened, I guess you're still in communication with them today.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So my good friends came to the forefront. They would come visit me daily in the hospital. Having a restaurant background, they would bring food. So a lot of my friends are old restaurant guys. So they're like, "Hey, look, I brought you a side of ribs, and I got you a little bit of this," and because hospital food is notoriously terrible.
Yeah.
So they'd bring me food. They'd bring me DVDs. They'd come and chill out with me. Um, my my parents were in Europe at the time. I told them not to worry because there was nothing much they could do for me because I was just
Yeah.
in the hospital.
Yeah.
But I would need them after. And so my brother came from Toronto and spent time with me. And then once I got out of the hospital, my mom came and lived with me for a month and took care of me. And we'd just do like really long, slow walks around the block. And she was an angel, really helped me out. The whole family helped me out, just get through that and help me through some of the costs of tanks and stuff like that, float
Yeah.
tanks. All that
No,
stuff adds up pretty quick.
it does. Yeah, I was looking at float tanks like in other countries. It's definitely not free to do those things.
No, they're not free. Physiotherapy is not free.
Yeah.
All these things aren't free, unfortunately. And so I blew through all of the savings that I'd had saved for the 15 years before that, because
Yeah.
that's what it came down to. It was like, well, I can try and not heal, or I can spend all the money I have to get to a point of health that I can make money again. So it was
And it was worth it.
100%. I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
blow all my money all again to stay healthy. Health is wealth. If I'm walking with a cane, but I have $1 million in the bank, it's worth nothing. But if I can go surfing in the mornings, but I've only got a crappy old VW van and not much money, but
Yeah.
I can surf every morning and be healthy, I'll take that any day over $1 million and walking with a cane.
And I was thinking about during that time in the hospital, did you do anything to entertain yourself, or was it just like sleeping, like, or did
It
you?
was a lot of sleeping.
Okay.
A lot of recovery. So I was on a antibiotic that was so corrosive I couldn't put it into an IV drip. I actually had a permanent line fixed through my arm that went directly to my heart. It's called a PICC line. And so I was on an hour and a half of antibiotics on a PICC line to my heart daily. And I was just so
Insane.
broken that I would just sleep and wake up and eat a little, watch maybe a DVD on my laptop in the hospital bed, and just sleep. Like any form of physical activity would drain me. So
Yeah.
when I got out of the hospital, if I went for an hour-long walk, I would take a 3-hour sleep after. Like I would
Sure.
just be burnt. And that's how I started to recover slowly, was in Montreal. Montreal's an island. And so they have the St. Lawrence that flows on either side. And oddly enough, it makes standing waves. So you can go surfing in Montreal on a standing wave. And I'd already done this in the past. And so what I did is I took my surfboard down to the standing wave once I got a little bit more strength.
Yeah.
And I would go surf for 20 minutes. And it would kick the shit out of me. And I'd come back and I'd lay in the park. And I'd literally like take a nap on a nice laid blanket and
Yeah.
with a little lunch. And I would do that for an hour. And then I'd get up and I'd go surf for another 20 minutes. And I would do that like every day in the mornings. And then my
Some would say
surfboard
that's
was,
not a bad life.
well, that was my recovery. It
Yeah.
actually, for 6 months, I couldn't, after I got out of the hospital, I couldn't stand up straight. Literally, I was
Gotcha.
standing like this the whole time because my spine had decayed so much. I had
Yeah.
some of my spinal blocks were Swiss cheese. I lost 3 discs in my back that completely disintegrated from the infection. And so my spine was curved the whole time. And then within a week of going to this standing wave, I could stand up straight just by trying to lift my head up off the board for paddling. It
Yeah.
gave me enough strength that within what I couldn't do in 6 months, within 1 week of surfing this crappy little wave in Montreal, I could
Yeah.
finally stand up straight. So
How many of those waves are around Montreal? Because once I was in Montreal and I saw something that I was like, that looks surfable, like right next to like just walking in a park. And then someone was like, oh yeah, there's people who surf that wave. And then I was like, oh, okay.
there's probably 6 waves, depending on what side of the island you're on. The
Gotcha.
most famous one is behind Expo 67 by the racetrack.
Yeah, exactly. It was there.
Yeah, that's a
It's at
big
the
wave.
racetrack.
That could be really big. So that's a really fun wave. A lot of guys, they tie a rope to a tree and then just sort of like stand on their board and use the current and go out to the wave holding onto the rope and then let go, and
Yeah.
then they're on the wave. You can paddle into that one. That's more of an experienced surfers kind of wave, because once you get
Gotcha.
blown out, you get thrown into the rapids and you got to paddle your way back out. The one I did was in Point Claire, a little less well known, much
Okay.
easier, much more friendly wave.
Smoother. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was very friendly wave. It was me and like a bunch of 10-year-old kids. It was not the hard wave. I was
Yeah.
same thing. When I was just trying to recover, I got on my bike one day and I rode up the mountain in Montreal trying to, and I was thinking I was feeling strong and I could see someone trailing behind me. I was pedaling super hard. I'm like, I gotta not let this person catch me. That was my
Yeah.
challenge. It was not let this person catch me. I was pushing as hard as I can and make it up to the top of the mountain. And I look back and this little girl passes me, cling, 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 hi. I'm like, oh my God. And I was just so weak, that I had no power, that a 10-year-old girl couldn't beat me on her little bike. But
And with that, so it's like you did this whole recovery. Then a year and a half later, is that when you came to Dominican Republic, or you did other
Pretty
stuff?
much.
Ah, okay,
Pretty much.
that was it. And what do you think of this
Much. I
country?
got healthy. I went back to work a little bit. I had the whole time I was sick, I had thought about doing Uncharted Kite Sessions based on my previous restaurant experience, hotel experience. I worked for a company in Europe called Butterfield and Robinson, which did bicycle tours. They do tours all over the world. They're
Gotcha.
pretty much the premier bike tour company in the world for biking and walking. And so I worked for them for a while in France, and that was pretty much one of the most amazing jobs I'd ever had. So I wanted to do variation of that with kite surfing. And then I thought about it for a really long time. And then I went in Montreal. It's custom. It's the yearly migration or bi-yearly every spring and fall. You go down to Cape Hatteras.
Okay, yeah.
You can get down to Cape Hatteras from Montreal on a 1 day's drive and literally change seasons in that drive. You can go from still snow on the ground in April in Montreal to spring conditions in Cape Hatteras. So you go down there early, you start your kite season early. And I'd gone back to work a couple of months, and I came down to Cape Hatteras in April for my migration, and stepped on my board for the first time in a year and a half.
Kiteboarding.
Kiteboarding, yeah. Stepped
Yeah.
on my kiteboard, yeah. Stepped on my surfboard for the first time in a year and a half. First time I touched a kite in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And within 2 days, I had made a plan to move to the Dominican Republic. It became the plan that I had in my head. As soon as I felt the board under my feet and the kite in my hands, I was like, yeah, this feeling is cements all the thoughts I've had over the last year and a half. And
So when did you, just real quick, when did you get into kiteboarding then?
got into kiteboarding 12 years ago, 12 years ago, yeah, in Montreal.
2008,
2009, I think. Sorry, yeah.
2009. Same time
Yeah,
as me
we're
then.
almost 29. Yeah.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
so then you went down, and then you ever been to Dominican Republic before that, or you just thought, why did you think of this country?
Oh, from as soon as I started kiting, I was coming to the Dominican Republic. Direct flight
Okay,
from Montreal.
to Puerto Plata.
Puerto Plata. I'd come down here, stay at Extreme Hotel right on the beach, and
Okay.
would come down here with my friend Justin, with other friends, and kite all the time, and loved the DR. So I already knew the region. I first came to Sosua in 1985 with my family.
Jesus.
Yeah, and
1985.
1985, when Sosua was rocking, actually partied with the Beastie Boys and Run DMC on Sosua Beach in 1985. I was 12 years old. I was like, who are all these guys with these
How old
blonde
were
hair?
they?
I don't know. They were in their prime, man. This was mid 80s.
Okay.
Turned out Run DMC and Beastie Boys had the same manager, and he was marrying a Dominican. And so they all came down for the wedding.
For the wedding, yeah,
And
okay.
so they were all on the beach every day, just drinking. And I had my first rum-filled pineapple with Mike D from Beastie Boys. I got them all
Jesus.
to sign the back of my Powell Peralta Vladimir Guerrero skate shirt. They all signed it with a Sharpie, and I still have that shirt.
Okay, you
And
still have it.
yeah, it's in my mom's closet, or my old closet in my parents' house.
Oh, wow. See, those are the
Back
memories.
in
Those are
Canada.
the
So
memories to prove that it all
right,
happened.
remember to prove the first time I ever went surfing was a north swell in Sosua Bay. So when I was here on that vacation, there was a north swell, and so the reef in Sosua Bay had waves.
Did you
And
also surf
so
with the Beastie Boys?
no, they weren't much athletes. But I served with the local Dominican kids
Nice.
because I was a swimmer at that point, you know. So swimming in the ocean for me was a piece of cake, and I was like, "Oh, surfing, let's try this out." And so fondness for the Dominican Republic. When I flew in '85, the airport was about the size of my apartment now. There was no real airport. There's just like a desk with a customs guy, and it was interesting. And like I say, Sosua was on fire. The town was amazing.
Yeah.
The beach was amazing.
But Cabaretta, you didn't visit at that time? Never.
I did. I
Oh, you
drove
did?
through one day. Yeah, I came to Cabarete.
What
It
was it
was
when you were there?
5 buildings.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like I
And
remember
sand.
everyone saying that it was this giant windsurfing capital, And we came and we checked, and there was windsurfers, and there was 5 buildings, and I actually got a Cabarete T-shirt with a little windsurfer on it and everything. And I don't have that shirt anymore, but I'd been to Cabarete, but there was no Kite Beach, there was no major hotels, there was nothing. I mean, there were barely fridges in the DR back at that point.
Yeah. No, it's really not
It
what
was
it
very
is
raw,
today. Very raw, exactly.
very raw. It was.
And any of those guys that you saw out in the water, the local guys that you saw surfing or windsurfing, are any of them people that you know today, or no idea?
No idea. No idea.
Okay.
As a 12, 13-year-old kid, it was just all.
No, that'd be like a big coincidence, like.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Who knows? I could have been out there with Jan Marco Rivera's surfing,
Yeah.
who I'm friends with now, and we probably crossed paths when we were kids.
Yeah.
We're close to the same age. There's Dominicans that I know who are pro athletes, or even Luciano. I could have been out with him.
Sure.
I came surfing to Encuentro with the family. We did all the hits, on family.
Was
vacation.
Encuentro a thing back then, 1985?
Yeah. It was known for surfing. So it was known for surfing. It didn't have the schools that are there now. It definitely not the notoriety, but it was the surf spot. And then this was the windsurfing spot. And then did all the tours. Did the mine? What's the rock they have here that encases mosquitoes? Larimar. And no, the brown one.
I know Amber. Sorry.
Amber. Went to the Amber mines. Yeah. Keep thinking Jurassic Park. So.
No, that's wild. That I didn't know you came in 1985. That's really a long time ago. Before my time.
Oh, and you'd land, and it was before planes had the same insulation in the windows. So when you landed on the plane, all the windows in the inside fogged up and became misty, and the airport was just jungle around it. So when you landed, you just looked like you were landing in the jungle, and everything misted up. And I was just like, where the fuck are we? It was quite pardon the language. And it was interesting. It was eye-opening.
And then, so you came back after all your injury, your recovery. You came back you went North Carolina, Hatteras, and then is it South Carolina? No, North Carolina. North Carolina, Hatteras,
Cape Hatteras.
Yeah. Cape Hatteras, and then Dominican Republic, and then what? What happened there?
And then I've been here ever since. So went to Cape Hatteras, went back to Montreal, put everything I owned into storage, and moved here 2 weeks after that Cape Hatteras trip. And
how many years ago was that?
7 years ago.
And when did Uncharted start?
7 years ago. So everything started that same summer. Everything. I moved to Cape Hatteras, moved down here, got a lay of the land. Used to work for pretty much every kite school on the beach here, whether it was Dare to Fly, Kite Club, LEK, coached for all of them just to see what it was like. Did my IKO at the Kite Club. So I got my certification for coaching, but I don't use IKO now because Uncharted is beyond that. But and just sort of cut my teeth on what it was like to coach every type of rider and get the experience of that for kiteboarding. I wanted to get in, a couple 100 hours of coaching Monsieur, Madame, tout le monde, everyone and their son.
Yeah.
And then improve my own skills to the point where I could coach people beyond my skills, and then talk to all the pros in the world, and they all said, yeah, let's have a party.
So this wasn't your first solo business, like your first business, not solo business, but your first business that you started. No, you started other businesses before. Exactly.
Yeah. I used to have a woodworking company in Montreal.
Yeah.
When I worked for construction and restaurants, I've opened businesses for other people. I've had up to 50 employees working underneath me. So I've had experience as a management position. So this was, usually I do work for other people. I enjoy the team aspect. Sometimes I find it for myself, it's more motivating to have the pressure of other people counting on you.
Yeah. Sure.
So that's my motivator. When it's just me in front of the computer, sometimes I just go surfing instead. So, yeah, I enjoyed it all. But 7 years now, Uncharted Kite Sessions. Kevin Langery was my first.
Yeah, Kevin Langery was the first. I remember that back in I don't know if I was there for that one. I think I was, that I helped on the Downwinder.
Maybe,
I'm not sure.
Probably. You might have been there from one of the first ones, if not the second one.
if not exactly, if not the second one. Um, so then when you start off this business, did you sort of have like a map out of like how you're going to start it and how you're going to go about it? And what were some of the things that you thought were going to be easy and some of the things that you thought were going to be hard? And did that sort of play out how you thought in your head? Like, did what you originally think of happening happen?
Not in as direct of a line. Now, 7 years in, I have the demand and I can fill my camps. My expectation when I started was there would be more demand to ride with pro riders.
Yeah.
I thought that would be an easier sell. I thought if a pro just said, "Hey, come ride with me," everyone would be like, "Okay, sure."
Yeah.
But getting the people to jump on a plane, put the money down is definitely more challenging. But that also comes with the reputation. You have to develop the reputation for the people to spend the money.
Yeah.
Um, that was, and the more hard part is navigating the internet and search rankings and SEO and learning the back end of how to. Uh, I'm used to a very hands-on business,
Sure.
whether hotels and restaurants, whether retail. Guy
Physical stuff.
walks in physical. The guy walks in the door. If I can talk to you for a couple of minutes, then we can make the sale. Then we can create some sort of relationship and go from there. Whereas when you're working on the internet and you're trying to sell a product online, sometimes it feels like you're pissing in the wind. You don't know,
Yeah.
and then there's such a lag in response. If you're doing a marketing campaign or if you're doing some sort of campaign in order to get it, you can get likes and you can get quick reactions, but you won't see the
Translate.
turnaround into
Yeah.
sales for a month or two. So it'll take you a month, 2-3 months to do a campaign to be like, okay, this was a good campaign. The ROI, the return on investment was really good on this. We should continue. Or you could have spent a couple $100 on a campaign or $1,000 on a campaign for a couple months and been like, I was a waste of time. We're spent money on magazines, to put an ad in a magazine, and
Yeah.
magazines aren't cheap. Is it worth it to spend $1,000 on a magazine, or is it worth it to spend $1,000 in just organic marketing and do your
Yeah.
own marketing that way? And so those have been the challenges.
So if you were to knowing what you know now, what would you maybe have done differently, or would you have done anything differently?
Uh, know what your weaknesses are. I'm not a social media kind of guy. It's very hard for me
Yeah.
to get up every day and hey, look at the beach day, put it in my story, put it in my feed, and make a story every day. I can get a photo once every couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm too private a person to be that attention seeking. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if your business is based on online marketing,
Yeah.
you got to get a face, at least an online face.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely when you come to join me for coaching and camps, you see my face, and I'm the person you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But in order to develop a strategy or to just have the passion to go online and do that day after day is I'd much sooner talk to a person. So like, for example, this conversation, you were surprised that I didn't have Zoom and we had to install Zoom so I could talk to
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
because I pick up the phone. I'm an old school kind of guy. I'll send an
Yeah.
email and my email will say, "Hey, you free at 1 o'clock? I want to talk."
Yeah.
So, and that's why I do my kite camps, is because uh, it's relationships. You can sit there and talk to someone. I can easily, you can get a critique of people who come to say, "Oh, your kite camp's expensive. I can go get coaching from X pro for $100 an hour. And if I do your
Yeah.
kite camp, I'm paying too much." Because I'm like, yeah, well, if you go with that pro for 1 hour, you're going to get your 1 hour and he's going to be done with you. And he probably will never remember your name after that 1 hour.
Yeah.
But if you come and you spend a week with Kevin, with Yuri, with any of these great riders, they know you after that. You're friends with them. You actually get to hear the stories and the insights. And, Kevin tells you about how he was almost thrown in jail because they thought he was smuggling cocaine out of Mexico, but it was just kite gear, and by the end of
Mm-hmm.
it, he's showing the guards kite videos and they think he's the coolest guy in the world, so that's the difference in the relationship building and the reason for the camps is because you get to know great. You get to hear funny stories because the pro
Yeah.
riders themselves have very unique lives. They get put in all kinds of interesting situations because they're constantly on planes and going to countries that we all wish we could go to.
Yeah.
And in travels, they don't necessarily have the right paperwork, or they don't have the right things set up in advance, so they get a lot of shenanigans.
Questions and yeah,
Yeah. So
situations.
the stories they have out of that, is that's what life is about. It's about those relationships.
So it's like with you studying psychology, you sort of dealing in like a coaching world, which is in a way psychology because you're helping people like overcome blocks maybe in themselves, like to sort of develop themselves. So what do you see are sometimes like the most common blocks when you're coaching people, or that you've been coaching people in forever? And like, how do you sort of help them overcome it? And do those blocks that they have in that sport sort of translate to other parts of their lives, you think?
100%, 100%, 100%. I've had many clients who, after coaching, taking them for a week of coaching or doing a trip with me, they've gone back to work and seen their work differently. Uh, my favorite quote from a client of mine, sort of paraphrasing, he said, "After today, I went from the thinking of what will go wrong or what can go wrong to what will go right."
Yeah.
And so that was his. Every time he'd go out in the water, he's like, "Oh, this is going to go wrong. That's going to go wrong." And at the end of, I'd spend a week with him and or a bunch of them in Brazil. And at the end of the week, he was like, "No, I'm not thinking about what's going to go wrong. I'm thinking about what's going to go right." And so what he did, and it ended up translating into his life, was he was looking. So for example, we were trying to teach him how to do a duck tack on a foil board.
Yeah.
And so it's a complicated move because you spin under your kite, you spin under your board, spin underneath you, you transition your feet. And he was seeing the entire tack as one giant move. He couldn't break it down into different moves. And so his problem was he was moving his feet before he even turned his body. And so what we did is we just stepped backwards. I'm like, okay, let's just break this down one by one step by one. You're not finishing your 360. So if your body doesn't finish 360, your board's not going to come. So let's
Sure.
start cutting up wind, and don't even try to finish the board and finish the tack. Just try to spin your body around. Just try to come around and get back on your board. Even if your board's facing the wrong way, we're not working on the board yet. Just worry about getting your body around and
Yeah.
facing the right direction. And once he figured that out, that took him a few times because he would still panic. He'd still be thinking, it's like, okay. I'm like, okay, now we got that. Now let's push on the board. And just broke it down into steps. And it made life a lot easier. And so mental blocks are people's fears. A lot of people carry their life into their sports, you know? So they think if I can't do this in work, they're not going to be able to do this here. And so it depends on the coach. What's helped me with psychology is learning to read that person. Some people are very visual. Some people are very verbal. You can tell someone something verbally and you can just see like deer in the
Nothing.
headlights.
Yeah.
Nothing. And then you're like, okay, watch my hands. Oh, okay. So you have to, that's what coaching is learning how to explain something and seeing whether it's registered with that person.
Yeah.
And you could try it one way, it doesn't register, you show them another way, and finally when they can tell you back what you've told them and they can explain it, they're like, okay, now you understand it. So mental blocks or fears, mental blocks or previous coaches. I have a new client now that I'm coaching who went as far as she could with her coach. And
Yeah.
because of the block between them and their communication, she was going to stop kiting. She was still in the beginner stages.
Yeah.
And she couldn't get past these mental blocks.
Sure.
And so when we got on the beach, I just let her talk. Well, what did you feel about that? What did you feel about this? And how was the coaching? Well, he always said this. I'm like, okay. And then as we would do stuff, I'd be like, do this. And she's like, well, the other guy told me to do that. I'm like, well, are you holding on to the other guy's coaching or are you following my coaching now? Like,
yeah.
And then once she was able to release the negative things, because the things that she would do, he would be very negative on her. She was turning those to positives with me, and then we're able to go in a more positive direction. So mental blocks are everyone's biggest challenge with anything, I think. Everything, whether you can think it's recovery from healing, from injuries, whether it's you think you can go to university or whether you think you can do a back roll. It all comes
Yeah.
down to your mental block.
And what do you think is the biggest block people have with working with a coach? Like, is a
Everyone thinks
coach
they're
for
better than
everyone?
they are.
Oh, okay.
Everyone thinks that they're better than they are. I don't need a coach. I'm a pro. You know,
Yeah.
when
Or I'm
I
super wealthy already and successful and whatever. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly. If people, especially if they are successful in other parts of life, they don't think that they need a coach. But my experience is the people who are the most successful in life actually have coaches in everything they do. So the most successful businessmen I know have always had mentors, have always had a group that they can talk to that can coach them, whether it's
yeah.
what are those called? A
You need
mind?
the, you need, sorry about interrupting. It's like, because I was checking if the word is right. The Shoshin mindset, which is like the beginner mindset in everything you do.
Yeah.
So not being afraid to sort of like see things in a new light or or understand that you're like not, you might think you are somewhere, but maybe realizing that you're maybe not there. And then sort of like what you're saying with like, that's why I was interesting that you're saying that to break big goals into small goals, like bite size, so you can sort of build your way up. And what you're saying, yeah, like people think they're better than what they are. So it sort of like blocks them from potential progress in a way.
Yeah, and people set themselves up on these giant goals, but they have problems setting their small goals in between. They just
Yeah.
see the end and they don't see how they can get there. So that becomes very daunting. And then some people can get through that dauntingness and a lot of people just get like, wow, it's just too far. But if you
Yeah.
just start breaking down slowly and then those little increment improvements give you such a mental boost as well, because you're like, every time you come off the water or out of the job, you've improved slightly.
Yeah.
And with that improvement, uh, you get more drive to continue.
Mm-hmm.
If you only see that end goal and you have like, my end goal is to do a back roll, but you just don't have your pop and you're not concentrating on your pop, you're just thinking about the back roll and you don't get there, you're going to quit. But if you all of a sudden your pops are nice and you have this nice float, all of a sudden the back roll seems so much more attainable because now you have so much more control in just your pop and
Yeah.
your original jump. So anything, just a lot of people, most people set their big goals too big and their small goals too small. They don't see
And then knowing all of this and you seeing it in other people, how do you push yourself? How do you overcome your blocks? And how does that work out? Or do you think you don't have any blocks? Or you're like, yeah, I have
Oh,
blocks.
we all have blocks. Anybody who doesn't have blocks doesn't have intricacies in their personality is lying to themselves.
Yeah.
Um, the same way, I just try and do the same thing myself. See where you
What is one block you have right now that you don't mind sharing, and how are you trying to work on it, for example?
marketing. I'm terrible at marketing and social media,
Yeah.
and so I just try and think about it more and what I can do to make it better, and try uh, and I do a terrible job at it because it's also something you got to enjoy what your block is. Um, I don't know. Yeah. Just,
What are you trying to do?
I don't know. I just trying to get more of it done. Trying to
And do you
talk
think
more. I'm not
you said marketing and something else? What did you say? You said
just social media,
social media marketing.
just creating more noise.
So
So similar to what you're doing is having the ambition to get. It's one of
hello?
those things. The more I want to create content that, oh, still there?
It cut out for a second. Sorry. I don't know if the video got it, but just for myself, I didn't hear you. You started talking and it cut out right away.
To create content. Yeah, to create content similar to what you're doing. That's
Yeah.
my block is to get over that block
Of just putting yourself
of
out there.
putting myself out there, making noise. I'm not a noise maker in general, so it's one of those things.
No, but also
Uh,
there's that double edge. The reason why I was asking about the marketing and the social media is that what I find on marketing and social media, sort of like what you mentioned before, I forgot exactly what you referenced it, but you're saying like people people are trying, like, let's say you're going to spend X amount of money on something. You want to get a return, right? A return on investment on that. And what I find is that a lot of people just make noise, and they might get the like, they might get the comment, they might get the share, but to what end? You know, like, where does that even lead to? And that's the thing, is like sometimes people are just making noise, and they might be good at making noise, and they might be good at getting likes and shares, but it doesn't really convert into anything. They don't really bring some sort of value, offer some sort of product that actually brings value, or offer some sort of service that actually brings value. And what I do find with your camps, I haven't attended one in the full length, but just being able to attend, let's say, one afternoon at La Boca plus a dinner, you could already tell, like, that's an experience that has value. You know, that's going to be memorable. That's fun. That's insightful. And instead of just like saying, hey guys, buy this wish.com Apple iPhone cover.
100%. And that is my goal, is just to create experience.
Yeah.
Before I got sick and spent the time in the hospital, I had all the bells and whistles of modern man. You know, I had BMW, had a nice condo, had all the things you want.
Yeah.
And I realized, having looked back at my experience in Butterfield and Robinson, how amazing that was because of those dinner conversations with people, and especially with a nice kite camp, a quality kite camp, you're going to attract a clientele who've had interesting lives,
Yeah.
who have stories to tell. And especially when you have a quality coach, like a world champion like Kevin or Muna or anyone like that, you're going to attract people from around the world, from South Africa, from Brazil, from Europe. And the stories are incredible. The experiences that are incredible. You know, the people you meet, from the chairman of Coca-Cola to the chairman of the Singer Sewing Machines to the vice president of the Wall Street Journal, you know, they all have such varying backgrounds. You know, to a guy who's a millionaire from growing strawberries. You know, you have guys who do all kinds of interesting things. So,
what links them together, you think? Like, what? So
the
these
passion for the ocean,
individuals.
the passion for outdoors.
No, but like that's
Passion
one
for
part of it. But it's like, what past that? What, all these sort of unique individuals that you say have all these, like, they're full of stories, they're full of experiences, and they might be from varying backgrounds. You know, like you sort of mentioned, like higher up, like CEO or founders or this and that. What sort of links? Because those types of people, I find you could also find them in. I always find this wrong because it always makes it sound wrong, you know. But like people that don't have all those resources, like CEO of a bank might have, right? Financial resources and all this. But sometimes there's people that you meet that are in those positions, but they're very, like, what people say, down to earth, or very open individuals. What links these people? What makes these people have these mindsets of, like, they don't really care where they're from. Like, they understand where they're from, or they might have done something epic and legendary. And in their eyes, they might not think it's epic or legendary. They're sort of like, this is what I had to do. Like what you're saying with Kevin, that he's showing the cops, like, hey guys, I'm actually a kiteboarder and this is what I do. You know, he's just like, for anyone outside, that might be a crazy story. But for Kevin, he's like, I just had to do that in the moment to get past this one stage, you know? So what sort of links these, is it a mindset? Is it experiences? Like, what leads someone to being open and being like that other,
Adventurers.
they're not like an NPC in a game,
Yeah.
you know, they're an actual player in the game. What turns people to be an actual player?
Curiosity. People who come to these are curious and are open to new experiences. So just by the fact that you're coming for coaching and you're coming to get someone better than you teaching you something means you're already open to new experiences. You're already open to knowing that you don't know everything and someone else knows more than you.
Yeah.
And so that links them together, is that they all have some sort of humbleness in that respect, that they don't think they're the best. I mean, we still definitely get clients like that, but in general, no.
Yeah.
And Mother Nature, I think, is a great humbler in sport. So, and that's why I love sport, and I've always loved sport. Most of life, And most people, unfortunately, are bullshitters. You know,
Sure.
I'm the greatest. This I make X amount of money.
Yeah.
I'm a Fortune 500 company, but you can't really bullshit in sport. You can either do the sport or you can't. So
Sure.
you can say to me, I'm the greatest squash player. You know, I played squash my whole life, this and that. I'm like, oh, great. Let's go play a game of squash.
Yeah.
As soon as you swing that racket, I can know whether you can play squash or not. You know,
Sure.
you hit the ball literally one time. All right, you can play squash. You know, same thing
Sure.
with a kite, same thing with anything else. And it puts, no matter how big your job is or what your title is, if you go out on an overhead day with a surfboard, whether you're the CEO or you're just a surf bum, Mother Nature's going to beat the crap out of you the same. It's not going to
Exactly.
care either way. You're going to be as humbled as the next person. We just had 2 weeks of the most fantastic waves here in the Dominican Republic with Hurricane Teddy and all these other nor'easters that came down. And this week, I'm a humbled man. There were days when I would go out and I literally could not make it through the out one side. One day I couldn't make it to the outside because the waves were so big. I just got
Yeah.
pummeled for an hour on the inside, came in, and just as coincidence, this guy walks the beach every day, walked by, he's like, hey, how you doing? And I just told him, oh, humbled. You know,
Yeah.
I'm nothing today. Mother Nature put me in my place. And so that maybe is the bonder between the people who come on the trips, because no matter how good you are, when you took your first kite lessons, there was a point in your kite lesson that you ate it
That you
for
struggled.
sure. Whether you got too much speed and you board caught an edge, or you just ejected because you had too much power. In your beginner lessons, everybody had water fly up their nose at 400 miles an hour and walked off the water and was like, okay, I'm done for today. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the common binder. Maybe it's the personal touch. I talk to every client that comes on every one of my trips. I don't have a book here button. I don't, you can't just go onto my website and go click here, pay. All right, I'm going to go see Kevin, and then just show up 6 months
Yeah.
later and be on the trip. You have to send me an email. We have to start talking. Uh, and if you're a good fit, you're a good fit. If you're not, if it's not your level, if it's not what you're looking for, I'll be honest with you. You know, if you're looking for something that is not what our Uncharted could offer, then we can't. Or if you're not the level, I'll encourage you to get to a higher level or come for private coaching so we can get you to the level that you want it to be to learn from Kevin or someone else. But the people who come on my trips are cool people. People who go on trips like this in general are generally cool people. I learned that working for Butterfield and Robinson. You know, people choose their vacations. People who want to go on cruises, go on cruises. People who want to go
Yeah.
all inclusives are all inclusives kind of people. People who want to come on an adventure are coming on an adventure for a reason. They want something more in life. And they're not necessarily cash driven as much as they are experience driven. You know?
No, it's something that I always like sort of see and realize, like, and it's sort of what you said, that like Mother Nature is a great equalizer. And yeah, you see it for sure in like in surfing or something like that, because you're really vulnerable to the elements when you put yourself out there. I
Yeah.
don't know, like, what do you see the differences between land, snow? I don't think you do any air sports. Like you haven't done skydiving or any of the or paragliding.
Well, I've done skydiving.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But like not practice, I'm saying like further,
Yeah.
like maybe
Yeah.
the tandem jumps and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I did. My friend had a
And
pass one summer. Did a lot.
and then water and then water sports. What do you think is the big difference? Are all these sort of sports equal in their own way, or are they actually all different? And then if they are different,
Cool
sort of
fact
like
that they
how?
get you out in nature. They all get you out in nature, and so I think all the people who do outdoor sports are a fan of nature
But what if
in some
indoor
way.
sports? Like what if it's basketball, soccer,
Athleticism,
athleticism?
just love of sport, like the purity of it. That's I played basketball. I played high school basketball. Played every sport. When I was a kid, I went swim practice in the morning and came to school. Basketball practice at lunch. Football practice after school. Straight to swim practice after football practice.
Yeah,
It's people who love sport. People who love athleticism. You know, you either have athletes or you people who don't like doing sports. Some people are like, oh my god, I hate throwing a ball, and other people, the greatest thing in the world is to go outside and throw a ball.
Have you ever seen anyone like get into, do you think you're born with athleticism or you develop that over time? Like how does that happen? And is it ever too late?
No, I think everyone is a different level of athlete, for
Sure.
sure. Uh, when I was a professional athlete, that's one thing I realized very quickly. The only reason was able to stay an athlete is because I knew that I wasn't the athlete that other people were. So I would have to find a way to be better. So when I played high level water polo, I'm definitely not the biggest guy in the pool. I'm not the strongest guy in the pool.
Yeah.
Guys are much bigger than me, but what I did was my technique and how I would grab your arm, how I would try and wrestle the ball away from you. I incorporated jujitsu moves into water polo. And so that became my way of making equalizing a guy who was 6'6", 220, you know? Okay,
Mhm.
how I'm not, if I just try arm wrestling with him, it's not going to work. If
Yeah.
I turn his wrist, it might work better. So every person is an athlete. How far you can go is all up to you and how much you want to push your level. Um, yeah, you can do anything you want. Some people definitely aren't athletes, just like some people aren't pianists and some
But
people
could
aren't
they,
artists.
but you could develop that in a way if you wanted
You can
to.
develop to a point. Like, everyone can pick up a pencil and draw, but only X amount of people will be very good at drawing, right? Or
Yeah.
playing piano. Everyone can do everything. My wife is beautiful playing piano, and she teaches me to play piano sometimes, and I'm terrible, and I'll never be as good as her. But I'll be good within my level and whatever I'm happy with, right? So it depends on how much you want to push it, how much it means to you for your sport. If you're a kiter, are you happy going out just on the weekends by your local lake or ocean and mowing the lawn? Or do you want to improve yourself? Do you want to get to the next trick? And at what point do you say, okay, I've gotten to unhook tricks and that's as far as I want to go? And then that becomes okay, well, now the more complicated the trick, the more chances of an injury, right? So basic trick to
Should you ever
find.
stop though? Should you ever like, is it you know how like you're saying that like, okay, there's a higher chance of injury, let's say, but is there ever a point where you're like, like, is that a wise or unwise decision to be like, I don't need to get better? You know, is that sort of like a limiting, is that sort of a block there, would you say?
That's a personal choice. People can want to get better. It depends what you want out of it. Some people go
Yeah.
kiting just because they just want to burn off the week. They don't want to go out and they don't want to think about learning a new trick and putting that effort in and the
Yeah.
injury and the wipeouts and because when you learn, you get knocked down. You get knocked down a few pegs. And
Sure.
so a lot of people don't want that when they go kiting or when they go do their sport. What they want to do is they want to go enjoy their sport. They want to go out, enjoy the sun, go for a ride, come back in, have a margarita, call it a day. So I wouldn't say that's a
Yeah.
block as so much as what you're doing your sport to get out of it. What do you want to get out of it? Myself, I like pushing just because I like
What are you trying to
getting
get out of it?
freedom. But that's what it is for me is freedom. It's where if I can start, whether it's doing any sport, if you ever catch me whistling while I'm working, it's because I'm actually in the moment.
Gotcha.
I'm thinking like you can hear me on GoPros humming all the time. If you have like the mouth put GoPro
Yeah.
with volume, you can, and I'm in waves, you can hear me because in my head, I start a soundtrack. And once I'm in the soundtrack, I'm riding and I'm having fun.
Gotcha.
And so that's why I kite. Why I do my business is to share that experience with other people. Is for the people who do want to get better and they go have a coaching lesson with me.
Yeah.
My reward, my biggest reward for any of this is the look on people's face when they're done their 2 hours with me. When they come to the beach and we're sitting there having a cerveza at Encuentro after our downwinder, and they just have this look like almost like they're in love. They have just this
It might
shivering.
be.
They might be, and they're in love
Yeah.
with the because that's what they just had. They're just like,
Yeah.
oh my god, that toe side turn was wow, and that
Mhm.
look for me is the satisfaction, is the paycheck. Uh, because that's what people will remember. In 50 years from now, you're not going to remember the car you have this year, or you might, but you won't have it in the same fondness as that time I spent a week with Me Too in Brazil,
Yeah.
and we went down the coast, and after we got to the hotel, we went out in the sandbar and we dug out some clams, and then we pan fried some clams with butter, and and watched the full moon. And those are the stories,
So you would say, because I saw this, and I remember we talked about it a little bit, is like traveling, you think is like an essential maybe part of life, or no?
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
What if you don't
If
have the means to travel? Like, how can you get around that then? Can traveling nationally be, because some people might not be able to do international travel, but they can maybe do national travel. You think you could,
100%.
yeah, you could find the same.
Canada and the US are so massively big, at least, where I come from, that
Yeah.
East Coast to West Coast are very different people. Like
Hmm.
if you compare the size of the United States and the size of Europe and how much it changes from France to the Ukraine and the change in people, it's going to be the same in the United States from California to Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very different person. Now they're all going to be called Americans, but they're going to have a very different view on life, just like Ukrainians and French or Italians
Yeah.
and Russians. So if you're stuck in a giant landlocked country like Canada, the US, Brazil, very different. I go south of Brazil, north of Brazil, very different Brazilians, different colored skin, different color language, even north coast to south coast of the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
I go to the
It's way
south
different.
coast, it's very different than the north coast. So if you can just travel locally, travel locally. If you can travel internationally, do it on the cheap, most of my life was traveling in with a backpack, sleeping in a dorm room,
Yeah.
and meeting all kinds of people, and living off $12 a day, and eating spam and rice and whatever.
I
Save
still
what you
haven't
can for
eaten spam,
travel.
I think, in my life.
Spam and
Ever.
brown sugar in a cast iron pan, delicious.
Jesus.
uh
What is spam anyways? What is that actually?
just processed meat, essentially
So it's
processed
meat.
meat packed into, yeah,
So you're putting
processed
meat and
meat.
sugar in a pan.
Yeah, spam is essentially bacon, like processed bacon stuffed into a can that you can take anywhere. You peel off the
Interesting.
top, you pop it up, you can slice it into pieces, and then just from my camp days when I was a kid at camp, we used to sprinkle brown sugar on it, and then you put it in a cast iron pan, and it sears it and gives it this like caramelized, so it's like caramelized bacon. So if you have
I'm
bacon and eggs
almost
and stuff,
debating if I should try that one day.
oh,
Like I don't eat
it's
meat.
so
I don't
good.
eat. I don't generally, but I'm debating because that's everyone always talks about spam. A can of spam, can of spam. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
So if you can traveling is the greatest teacher there is. You'll realize that,
better than YouTube.
oh yeah, YouTube is not an experience. YouTube is an
Yeah,
experience based on someone else's experience and their view and their agenda.
yeah,
Only by traveling and walking. Fly somewhere, get out, get a little backpack full of water, and go for a walk. Every
yeah.
time I travel, I land in Bangkok. I walk through Bangkok for 5 days straight, literally all day, every day.
And what did you do?
Last year,
Like, what did you? What did that?
everything.
What did that lead to? Like, did you talk to locals? Did you?
Yep,
Uh,
locals love finding tourists, is my experience. If you just walk along, soon enough, some locals just going to start randomly walking beside you, and just to see if they can get your interest.
yeah,
Half the time they're trying to sell you something.
yeah.
The other half the time, they are themselves just trying to pass the day. Uh,
Gotcha.
Many times I've been walking and some younger kid has come up to me and started talking to me because they're interested in where you're from, because they themselves have not traveled, not
Yeah.
even nationally. They've never been on a plane, some of the people you meet. And so they're really interested to see who you are, to
Mhm.
practice their English. Hey, can I talk to you? I want to practice my English. And they ask you questions, and then they ask you, well, have you been to this church over here? Oh, no, come with me. I take you. And so the locals are really ecstatic to show you around, you know? And I've spent days, and I'm still friends with people from India, from Thailand that I met that were locals. And especially with Facebook, you become friends with them, you can keep track of them,
Yeah.
and they'll show you the true country. I remember once I was walking in a town in northern India, and if all the tourists are going that way, I walk the opposite way. And I was exactly that. I walked and walked and walked, and I got to this one square, and I was sort of walking, and this guy comes up to me. He's like, "You lost?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, are you looking for the square, with all the tourists?" And he's like, "It's over there." I'm like, "No, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for you. I'm looking for India. I want to see what's
Yeah.
it. Oh, come, 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 come." Went to his house, had tea, helped him. He had a printing press. So we went into his printing press, and I helped him bind books on this hand-turned printing press. We spent the day doing that. Another day, I crossed these woodworking guys who were just working out of a garage, and I just stopped to watch them. And they're, come, come, come. And ended up building a bed with them because I was a carpenter. So I
Yeah,
showed them the
sure.
techniques that I had, and ended up going to their house for dinner. And you'll see that, as the Italians say, una faccia, una race, one face, one race. We're all humans,
Yeah.
whether it's a different color, whether it's a different region. I think the biggest downfall of human civilization is borders.
Yeah.
If the world had no borders and people could just walk wherever they wanted to go, people would settle where they wanted to be. You can say that, oh, if the world had no borders, everyone would go to the beach or everyone would go to this. No, they
Not
wouldn't.
really.
A lot of
Yeah,
people
no.
hate the beach. A lot of people would prefer the mountains,
I actually
you
don't
know?
like sand that much.
So if borders are the biggest downfall to humanity because it gives people the impression that something is theirs,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I own this, Brazil owns this, or America owns this.
yeah,
And it's no, humans own this. We all
yeah.
own this.
And it's like for Americans, how old is America? Like 200 something years old, right? Or not even.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like you just had it for 10%, if that, 10% of from what we know, of like
Yeah.
2000, and before that, infinite, almost
Yeah,
billions.
infinite. Exactly. Exactly. So it's
So but
traveling will
that's an interesting thing though, is like how that how people have that, like that's also a thing that I find that people that are more open usually don't have that, like I know it's good to be like have some sort of like, I think it's good to understand that you're influenced by that, like that nationalism and pride and all these things sort of can block you in a way, like it closes you up to new things because you're like, it's like a
100%.
way to revert to a safe ground for yourself.
It's
But
preconceived views, preconceived notions of what people are and who they are and what they think.
yeah.
And that's the base of essentially racism, is that you think you already understand a human when you don't really. You haven't walked a mile in their shoes.
So
So
then isn't everyone in a way racist? In a way.
unfortunately, everyone has their predispositions
Yeah.
to
Because
a
always people
thought.
always think that racism is like just one or the other, like black versus white or something, but there's racism in
Nope.
everything.
There's racism in everything. There's racism in
Yeah.
everything, and it's up to humans to be open and realize the way people are. And it comes down to also where you grew up.
Sure.
What was your accommodation? Is your society a machismo society, or is
Hmm.
your society a docile society? Right? Like is your society a respectful society? I A friend of mine in is a former F1 test driver,
Oh, okay.
and he was telling me a story of when he was out partying one night in Japan, and he was like, "Oh, I can't get too much, the girls and partying this and that." And
Yeah.
people he was with in Japan are like, "No one takes pictures here. No one, don't worry. Nothing you do here will go out because it's
Until it goes
respectful."
out.
No, but it doesn't go out because it's it's
Yeah.
it's a different society, so it's different where you come from, the respect that everyone gives each other.
Gotcha. So
North
it's a
America,
perfect place for people that are trying to escape.
to just be private, to
Yeah.
just be private, to everyone mind their own business. And then you have other cultures where your business is everybody's business. And then he was telling me the story. He's like, man, if I went out on a night like this with girls in my arm and we went to a restaurant and we were in London, it would be on all the tabloids.
Yeah.
But here it's not. So it's how you grew up. So the Japanese mentality is different than the Brazilian mentality, is different than all kinds of
I wonder
mentalities.
what's on the newspapers then in Japan. What do they talk about?
I don't know. Don't read Japanese.
They probably talk about today we're going
But
to cook this new meal together.
who knows? Maybe it's about economy. Maybe it's about more substantial issues. I couldn't say, but
Yeah.
it all depends Depends where you grow. It depends on what you have seen. You know, if you are a black kid growing up in Atlanta, your views on the police are going to be very different than a white kid growing up in Toronto. You know, and it all
So
you
what
got to
helped
walk.
open you up? It was just like your whole, I think it was like your sports background and being able to be in different events with different people, mingling,
Parents, my
parents
parents.
as well.
When
Okay.
we came to Sosua in 1985. I didn't stay at an all-inclusive in Sosua. We stayed at a little hacienda.
Yeah.
And at 12 years old, I was walking to the beach by myself with my brother, so my parents could have some alone time.
Yeah.
So when I was, by the time I was 10 years old, I was, because I'm Greek background,
Yeah.
I would fly to Greece by myself every year. By the time I was 10, my parents would put me in the airport in Canada, and I would pop out the other side. My grandparents would pick me up in Athens, and so I would walk through Amsterdam airport by myself
Yeah.
as a kid. And so it was just brought on me to not,
It's a big airport
yeah,
for people
Schiphol,
that don't
especially
know. Yeah.
10
Yeah.
years old. Uh, but I was always an adventurer. That was my biggest problem, actually, is my parents would be like, where the fuck is Andreas? You know,
Yeah.
I would just go for walks and go check stuff out. So, and that comes, and how you walk and present yourself in every country also opens doors for you. You know,
Hmm.
I once was walking in India and was walking with this girl, and we walked in these streets. She's like, I would never walk here by myself. You know, I would never come through here. And we went into all these places that she would never go because of just how I was. I was just open, smiling. Most
Yeah.
countries, people will look at you first, just look at you with no smile or no frown or anything. They'll just look at you. And so it's up to you to
Yeah.
respond. I always look at someone and, hey, how you doing? You know, like big smile right away. And as soon as you flash a smile and don't give an aggressive, the door is open like crazy. And especially if you can say hola or buen dia or whatever language that they're in, if you can hapkum kra, you know, whatever you can say in that, you learn the hello in that language,
It opens
and
doors.
open doors. Because especially in more adventurous, you know, if you're going to Italy, they're not going to be so talkative with you. But if you're going to non-developed countries,
Yeah.
they're really interested in talking to you because they
Hmm.
don't get a chance to see you. They see MTV, you know, so they want to see if what they see on TMZ or in the movies is actually what you're like.
Yeah.
So when I was in Vietnam last year, many times people would be like, can I just talk with you, sit and talk with you, you know? And then even just sitting and talk to them, you get to see the personality and what their body's like. So Vietnamese press right up against you. They talk to you like shoulder to shoulder. You never met the person. They're sitting with you on the bench, right up to you talking, and you're like, hey, whoa, hey, like a little bit of space. And so North America, there'll
Yeah.
be bigger space. And so it teaches you to be like, to roll with,
Adapt.
adapt and roll with the custom. Same in India. They come right up to your face. And then how to treat people, you know, and in India, China, these places, there's no such thing as a line for bus tickets. The counter opens and 400 people mob on it. They don't queue up one
Do people
behind
try
the
to jump over each other or?
100%.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So
as
it's a
soon
free
as the
for
next
all.
guy's out, it's a boom, next guy's in.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, they're incredibly respectful. So if you were the next guy and everyone knows you're the next guy and the guy goes, they're going to try and cut you off. But as soon as you say, hey, I was next. Oh, sorry. Pardon.
Yeah.
Go.
They're just testing their luck.
They test it because
Yeah.
there's a
They're
billion
testing
of
you,
them,
testing
right?
their luck, testing everything.
As soon as you go, hey, listen, I was next. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't
So
see you there.
yeah, exactly. Oh, I didn't see you there with the 75 other million people there.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. You learn the culture, walk a mile in their shoes, and realize we're all the same people. We all have the same struggles. We all want the same thing.
Essentially. Essentially.
Essentially, some people want more fame. Some people want more money, but
Yeah.
the core things we want: health, food, not to struggle, not to be have our human rights
Not to
trampled on,
suffer too much.
not to separate life. Even if the people who have the greatest life in the world have a shitty part to
Yeah, no,
it.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's okay. Like people always try to get rid of suffering completely, but I'm like,
Yeah.
it's part of the game, right? Like,
Suffering builds character, unfortunately. So it's good to have.
one sec. Sorry about that. Suffering builds character.
Well, so,
That's what you're saying, I think.
yeah, you
Yeah.
learn much more out of failure than you learn out of success. Being paralyzed in the hospital with my spine degrading to Swiss cheese was probably the most painful thing you could ever go through. Like, I can't describe the pain that was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on
Do you ever get immune to it in a way, or no? It's just never settles in that
end.
pain, like numbs itself.
Ish.
Ish.
Um, my tolerance to pain now is quite phenomenal, you know. But it's pain. Pain is pain. It's
It
still
was painful
suffering.
to get there.
Painful to get every day. Every movement was painful.
Yeah.
Like, there's a point where pain it just doesn't numb. It just is so excruciating that there's nothing you can do to do it. I was taking Dilaudid, like Tic Tacs, which are morphine,
Painkillers.
and I was still in blinding pain. And I've separated my knee to the point where I've looked at the bottom of my foot upside down backwards. That's how destroyed my knee has been. And that pain doesn't even come close to how much the pain hurt in my back, because it's your spine.
Yeah.
But that suffering made me realize what I needed to do with the rest of my life. It makes me appreciate where I live now, looking out the window now and seeing the ocean every day and seeing what life can give, you know, and what's priorities, you know. I always, you know, just like anybody, wanted the big car, had the BMW, had everything that you wanted.
Yeah.
And it was only through suffering that I realized none of that was important. That the only thing that was important was to be in love, to love the people who are around you closely. You don't have to love a lot. You know, I'm not known for having a billion friends, but the friends I have are very close.
Yeah.
And just enjoying life to the maximum. You never know when you're going to go. When I was paralyzed, I was fit as strong as you could be. You know, I used to be a professional athlete and was degraded to nothing and could have been dead, easy. And especially in this day of COVID, you can see it. You could be dead tomorrow. So suffering makes things sweeter and makes you see things clear, right? When you suffer, you no longer waste time. You're no longer like, okay, I'm suffering. This sucks.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to make this better? Why do I want this to stop? What do I want to get to? If everything is roses and you got money and then you don't know where you want to get to. You don't, you know, unless you're blessed and you know right away when you're young, but only through suffering a bit, you know, little challenges in life do you grow, become better, build character, you know, that teaches you who you are. You know, hey, I went through when I went to university, I part of a fraternity, and our fraternity was notorious for its initiation because it was very hard, several days
Yeah.
long. And I actually loved that experience because at the end of it, I learned a tremendous amount about myself because it was extremely hard, you know.
You didn't have to sleep with a pig, though, did you?
No, but you had
Okay.
sleep deprivation. You know, it was all the classic mind tricks, right?
Yeah, sure.
Just give you sleep deprivation, just work you, walk in a circle, shovel a pit, just get you to the point where people can start playing with your mind, you
Sure.
know, and seeing who you are. And that's the whole point of the thing is, and then you learn a tremendous amount about yourself, you know. So every adversity. When I was a kid, I had, do you remember the cartoon Calvin and Hobbes?
Sounds
And
very familiar.
the kid who had a pet stuffed animal tiger, and then when no one was around, the tiger came
Okay,
to life.
exactly. Okay, yeah, that's what I was
Very,
thinking.
very funny comic. And the comic was Calvin's going out for a bike ride. So the first square was Calvin going out for a bike ride, and his dad's like, all right, have fun. And then the next 4 squares are Calvin crashing on his bike, mountain like upside down.
Yeah.
And the last square is Calvin walking in the house, dragging his bicycle by his front wheels, not even wheels, like just dragging it by
Yeah.
his front wheel. And his dad's sitting in the paper, reading the paper, and the quote says, I see you've been out building character.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. Injuries build character. So to come full circle to injuries, that's where you see yourself, where you see your blocks. You know, if you have to recover your knee, are you going to get to the point where you can recover and have a strong knee and go kiting again, or are you always going to walk with a limp?
Yeah.
You know, and how much you push yourself is your character. How much are you willing to go into pain and to suffer to get what you want?
And you're willing to go all the way?
Oh, I've gone pretty
Which,
far. I got pretty far. I gave up everything I owned in Montreal on 2 weeks' notice. Moved here without knowing anybody really, and started this and gave up a lot to get this. So although I have a fantastic life here, it doesn't come with costs on the other end, right? So
yeah.
now I'm further away from family. I'm further away from friends who mean a lot to me. Uh, I have very good friends here in Cabarete. My best friends are for sure in Montreal. I don't get to
Yeah.
see them that often, you know. So not there's no free lunch in this world, unfortunately. But if you're willing to, also you have to know in your heart what you want,
Yeah.
and that comes without lying to yourself. So that's where suffering makes you not lie to yourself. You know, you can lie to yourself, and then when shit hits the fan, you're like, I've been lying to myself. So things like death, things like all life, birth, death, accidents, these things make things clear for a lot of very people. I know friends who've, you know, had spouses die or family members die, and they've said to me, you know, now I see a lot clearer. You know, that it just takes that. It takes a shaking of your foundation
Yeah,
almost.
exactly. It takes an earthquake in your life
It
to
takes an earthquake in
realize
your
the
life.
ground.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm doing this all wrong, or why you were doing thing, who you were doing it for. So those can be blocks as well. You know, like you don't follow your dreams because your parents don't believe that that was a real job,
Yeah.
or you don't people think you can't make it in this and you can't make a living doing that. You know, so it depends on what you want and your goals. If you want to be an artist but you want to be a millionaire, sometimes those two things don't match up. You know what I
Or it'll be
mean?
difficult.
It'd be difficult. Very few, you know?
Or you do it for your kids in a way. You become a painter, and then your paintings are worth millions once you pass away.
If they're worth, if you have that
If they're
talent.
worth, exactly. Yeah.
But if you are a mediocre painter and you know that you're never going to be Van Gogh, but you can still sell your paintings for a couple of grand,
Yeah.
then do your painting, because that's what gives you joy, right? You know, I'm not going to be a millionaire with Uncharted Kite Sessions, and nor is it my goal, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I just want to do a dozen trips a year and take whatever
A
150.
dozen trips a year. Okay, 12-ish plus. That's good. Not a bad number.
Well, I already do like 4 or 5 here, and
Yeah.
then I do 3 or 4 in Brazil. So I'm
Okay.
already up to 8. So they usually come in blocks of
Yeah,
trips,
yeah,
you know, it's
sure.
not one per month. So in the summer here, I do a trip every, or a camp every other weekend, or every other
Yeah.
week. So I do Kevin and week off, Yuri week off, Muna week off. And so I do like the summers intense, and then I have 6 weeks of relax, and then I go to Brazil and do 4 or 5 trips. And so if I can take 100 people out a year and show them an amazing experience, and cover my costs and have the quality time I need for my
Recovery.
wife, my health, my life, you know, that's my goal. I used to be the goal of being a millionaire. I used to be the goal of having the empire.
Yeah.
Um, but with that comes stress. With that comes the responsibilities. You know, if I had grown Uncharted and I had a giant complex over this COVID area, you know, and I had made Uncharted to the point where I had a complex and employees and this and that, my overhead, my leverage might have collapsed me. Like there are kite companies that are collapsing now. There
Yeah.
are restaurants, 60% of the restaurants in Montreal are going to go out of business probably soon enough because of COVID. So the bigger you want to be, the more you have to lose. So
Yeah.
I'm happy. I've resigned myself to not clients have Porsches. They like me. They'll let me drive them. It's fun. But I'm
Yeah.
happy to have a nice motorcycle, a collection of surfboards, and health, and the health to go out and enjoy a morning, and the time to not work on the weekends. On the weekends, I unplug my phone essentially and enjoy my wife and my life, and just take the quality time for that, because That's where it's going to go one day.
Yeah. No, and it's like, um, with all that being said, though, so it's like, where is it going from here? Like, where are you going from here?
Just more trips, finding a little bit more of a secure home, sort of a base for the camps, which I'm
Gotcha.
working on now. But
Is it
not
going to be
to
this
some.
country, or you're
Yeah,
looking anywhere? Okay,
I'll
this
stay
country.
here. COVID has changed that a little bit, I think. I've been looking. Brazil's always been a nice open possibility, but the world's in flux. So right now, just like anything, it's a bit of a hovering position for most businesses.
Yeah.
As I do kite camps, it's hard to bring people in from internationally.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
tricky.
it's tricky right now. I do have the flow of individual clients, which
Yeah.
sustains me, which is good. So there are definitely, and that's all I need, which is fine. That's all I'm happy with. You know, I have enough to sustain myself, put money aside, and enjoy life. Um, it really comes down to what happens with the Earth after this. What happens with COVID? What happens with the United States? It was quite the interesting debate the other night. So there will be tourism. There will be enough kiters to come down and keep going. So now it's just a. Even look at, we have pro kiters here who are visiting because they're like, well, I don't know where else to go. I've got no commitments. I've got no competitions. You know,
Yeah.
everyone's sort of in wait. The whole tourism industry is in wait. I think it will come back in time.
Yeah.
Um,
Differently, but it'll come back.
Definitely will come back. So it's
I think there's a big opportunity for people that are doing creating more unique experiences, because now if you're going to travel, you sort of want to make it worth it, especially that there might be hoops to jump through to travel with like tests and quarantining yourself and whatever other mumbo jumbo you're going to have to do. And now if you're going to travel, you're not just going to want to travel to go sit next to a pool for 7 days and then go back home to
exactly.
quarantine and make tests and do this and that. So now you're going to be like, if I'm going to go for 7 days, if I'm going to go for 2 weeks, I want it to be an action packed, valuable trip, because it might be my only trip of the year.
Yeah, 100%. And it's with the kite camps, it's a little easier, I think, because we're a small group. It's a maximum of 8 people,
Exactly.
so it's sort of insulated in that way. And so that's my goal on just having sort of more of a one location that I can work out of, so that we can keep that insulated group together.
Gotcha.
Um, when I would do kite trips in Cape Hatteras, I would bring in my own chef because there's not a lot of restaurant selection in Outer Banks.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what I like to do here, is just turn it back into more of that, where I can just bring in our own chef, make it an insulated package. And that way we don't have to worry about other tourists, other this and that.
Yeah.
And you can go back to your country in more safety. But we'll see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Kite industry is interesting. Some companies closed right away, and some have had the best 3 months of their career. You know,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
those who closed quick are like, crap, I should have stayed open. And the
Hmm.
ones who stayed are doing really, really well, because people are like, well, I got nothing else to do, so I guess I'll just stay home and kite.
Do some, yeah, exactly. It's a good solo sport to do, distance from everyone, out in the sun, out in the ocean.
Yeah,
And it's really an overall amazing sport. But
it
I
is the
guess
best sport.
it's a bit of waiting and seeing what's going to happen. And I think with all that has been like, yeah, all that's been covered, it's like, it's crazy how life goes, right? Like, I don't think anyone ever expected this when they were born, and now it's going to be, yeah, a new adventure, a new chapter for a lot of people.
I think within a couple of years it'll return to relative normal, but I think you'll
We'll just
see
have
masks
space.
for the
We'll
rest.
have space
Yeah,
helmets
we'll just
on.
have masks. But I mean, when you go to Asia, everyone's got had a mask on before COVID already, right?
Hmm.
So if when I was in Vietnam, people riding on their motorcycles, everybody had a mask on. Now, whether it was for smog or because of their previous experience with SARS, whatever it was a decade ago,
Yeah,
uh, that the norm of wearing a mask is already a norm in Asia. It's more of a North American thing
it's
where
like,
this
yeah,
isn't new. Um, so I think that will be the big thing. Whether COVID mutates and kills more people, who knows? But life almost has no option. It still has to march on. People still have to
Yeah.
get going what they're doing. Um,
People
Vaccines
must
will come
keep.
out. You know, people will eventually just be like, well, listen, I've had COVID, or whether herd immunity will get to a point. If it gets to that, a lot of people would die. It's not the best solution for sure.
Yeah.
Um, no one knows. Anyone who thinks they know is someone who wouldn't take kite lessons because they think they know everything, right?
Sure.
You gotta, what we know now, what we knew 6 months ago, are very different, and how
Very
people
true.
would react, and also very much the same. 6 months ago we didn't know as much, but at least we knew 6 months ago we still had to wear masks, and that's now even more obvious, right?
Yeah.
So the things that were obvious back 6 months ago are now still obvious, but then the intricacies of who gets sick, how sick they get, whether intubating someone on a ventilator is the right way or not. Maybe people died because they were put on a ventilator when they could have not. And that's some of the discussions I've read.
There's a
Who
lot of
knows?
stuff there. There's a lot of stuff there.
A lot of stuff. It's a new
So
world, but people will still go out in it, especially kiters. They're adventurous, so that's a
exactly,
huge.
there's nothing stopping them. Let's end it off with I think, like, what is sort of your motto or mantra that you sort of follow that sort of helps you push through everything?
My mantra when I was a kid was try anything once except for a guy named Serge. So when I was a kid, I went to summer camp, and I got invited to my friend's house from summer camp. And his mom made me this really nice cheese pizza
Okay.
because they were Middle Eastern, and they had made a few dishes that the heads were still on the animals, whether it was the bird or whatever. And so the plate itself didn't look that appetizing, for a little white kid from Canada.
Yeah.
And so she made me a nice cheese pizza. And it smelled really good, but it looked like, because the thing was
Funny.
looking at me. Yeah, I'm like, the bird's looking at me. How am I supposed to eat that? And then finally, my friend was like, "Hey, listen, give it a try. Give it a try. Worst thing
Yeah.
that happens is you
You
spit
get a
it out."
pizza. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. So put the food in my mouth, and it was delicious. Didn't eat any of the pizza, just ate everything that was on the tray.
Yeah.
And this happened when I was, 12 years old. And from that moment on, I sort of made the mantra, like, try anything. Like, the worst thing is you put something in your mouth, you don't like it, you spit it out. But it's like walking a mile in someone else's shoes. Until you do it, you can't be a judge. You can't say with any authority, this is good, this is bad, until you've done it, till you've tasted it, till you've tried it, till you've gone to that country, until you've walked a mile in the guy's shoes in India. You don't know what life is like for him
Yeah.
in Rajasthan. So my motto has always been just as long as, assess it, make sure it's not life threatening. If I jump
Yeah.
off this bridge, am I going to live?
Yeah.
Uh,
Try that one last.
Try that one last. But be open to anything.
Yeah.
Be open to criticism. Be open to, especially
Progress to
criticism.
change.
Criticism to change. Criticism. Is the hardest to take. Half of it comes to the person criticizing you and how they're doing it. But if someone knows you and cares for you and is giving you a talk and not giving you, or just giving you like points,
Yeah.
take it, absorb it. Don't take things personally. Realize that maybe what they're saying is true. Uh, and that's the thing about, after my kite coaching, my kite camps, I sent out a questionnaire. What did you like? What didn't you like? What I might think was great was not great. Like one
Yeah.
day we did a downwinder on the girls' camp to from here to Encuentro with all the girls, with Muna and Yalu, and the waves were decent size, but I didn't think they were that big. And when we got down to the end, my wife was like, "Okay, those waves are too big for the girls," and I was like, "No, they weren't." And she was like, "Yeah, they were." Listen to me. I was with you, and I was just like, "Oh, I guess you're right." And I was just in my own head thinking that, well, this is perfect.
Yeah.
But you got to take the criticism. Okay, now I know where I can set my bar for the wave. So what I think is perfect, running great in a kite camp, I need an outside voice to tell me that was good, that was bad, and be like, okay, how can I make this better? Okay, where's the new bar? So going forward is be open. Don't judge anybody until you actually talk to them. especially judging books by covers.
Yeah.
Working in the restaurant industry, you see that a lot. I used to
Hmm.
work in fine restaurants, and I would see gangster guys come in, yo, 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 and I'd be like, dude, you're in the wrong place.
Hmm.
This is not the restaurant for you. And then they pull out a wad of like $10,000. They're like, yeah, this is for me. I'm going to have the steak and the rib, and I'm like, okay, it is for you, no problem.
Yeah.
Dom Perignon.
Hmm.
So talk to the person, get to know who they are, don't,
Well, judging in a way is a bit of a filter to help you sort of like not waste too much time in certain scenarios. But then again, like if you're going to commit to something, it's like being open, I guess, because if you're open to every single thing, you'll never get out of your house. You'll stop and look at the flower. You'll stop and look at the staircase. You'll stop and
I
talk to
mean,
and by the time it's 12 o'clock at night, you didn't even make it down the 3 steps. You're like, Jesus, I got to go home now.
yeah,
but,
but people talk
but I
to
get
you.
you. Yeah.
Just listen to someone's story. Doesn't mean you have to agree to it. Doesn't mean you
Sure.
have to, say yes or no or take or waste your time on it. Be open,
Yeah.
listen. If it's a waste of time, move
Just
on,
move
move on,
on. Yeah,
move on. But
exactly.
you know, find out the stories of people. People have. You think you got a tough life? Most people have a tougher life than
Exactly.
you. Walk the mile in their shoes and realize why they were late today or what didn't work for them. And that's the key to being a good employer as well, is understand what happens to your employee when they're outside of the office. That'll affect them inside, their home life, their school life, their mental health, all that.
And that's sort of tying it back to what you were saying is like, why are you even like doing these talks, or what's the point of them? And I think it's sort of this, right? It's sort of like peeling the onion, hearing the different views, perspectives of people, right? This is it.
Yeah.
And
Breaking Bread, this is the new Breaking Bread or versions of it, but
yeah,
Breaking Bread
breaking
is
bread.
is exactly the best possible way. So like my kite camps are for sure, you're going to learn a ton and you are going to improve your riding 2 years in 1 week. But it's the breaking bread part that is the enjoyable part. It's, we're going to kite for a couple hours a day, but we're going to sit at dinner for 3 hours. We're
Yeah,
going to talk and you're going to have an amazing dinner, and
it's
nothing
true.
better than after a full day on the water, having tuna tartare and great food and great wine and great conversation with people who are like-minded. And that's where you get inspiration to travel. Someone who on that trip has been somewhere you want to go. Oh,
Yeah,
you've been to Zanzibar. Oh, what was it like? Oh, it was great. I know a guy there. Let me hook you up with Marcel. And then
yeah,
you send them there and they go there. And so talking to people is where you get firsthand accounts of what they've been through. And then when you talk to them, you get to know their personality. So if they have X experience when they were in China,
yeah,
you can either personality and why they had that type of experience, or if you see a person who's like you and they had a great time in Jakarta, you're like, well, I'm very similar to you and we'll get along, uh, and you just make connections with people breaking bread, and they'll go a long way.
I like that. I like that idea of breaking bread.
Yeah.
Sort of it is, and that's sort of also where I was thinking about with your camps, where there's like a lot of value. Like the water time is fun, but I think a lot of the fun also is during the meals and the hangouts and all that. That's where
Yeah,
you.
yeah. The every end of every session, we all jump into Extreme Hotel or wherever the camp is that day,
Yeah,
and we have a few beers before we all take off to go get our showers before dinner.
yeah,
Just a couple beers, couple of jokes about that crash or that whatever. Go take a shower. You come back for dinner, and then you break bed. And then I make a point of making sure everyone changes spots for dinners. At
sure,
least for the first couple of dinners. So you get to know the person beside you. Where are you from? Oh, you're from San Francisco. I've been there. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Fortaleza. And it's really interesting the jobs people have, the things they do.
exactly. There's no one single path to making it through this life.
No one single path, and there's no and kiteboarders aren't one type of person. You know,
Yeah,
they are adventurous people, and they come from all kinds of walks of life, from poor guys who are like ski bums but kite bums, to Bill Ty, to Fabrice, who's the biggest angel investor in the world.
yeah,
He's a big kiter, and so whether it's any of these guys all the way down to the local guy, you'll see Fabrice on the beach here just hanging out with the local Dominican kids kiting.
yeah,
There's no I'm worth $10 billion and you're worth nothing. We're all equal on the beach. We're all friendly on the beach, and brings us all together.
No, it's an interesting sport. That's why I like it. That's why kite surfing, I find. I guess it does happen a bit in surfing. It does happen in some of those, but I find the kite community very a unique community. Out of all the sports that I at least have practiced. Maybe there's some overlaps in skiing and snowboarding and stuff, but kiteboarding definitely attracts a wide array of people, and also the interactions between the people are more like leveled. It's like,
Mm.
because you interact mostly off the water, you don't interact really on the water much unless you get tangled,
Yeah.
and that's a whole other story.
But even on the beach, kiting forces you to interact, because unless you get to the point where you're self-launch and self-landing, you get someone launch you, someone land you.
Yeah.
You show up at the spot. If you're a new tourist, right away, the first thing I do when I show up at any spot is I find the locals. Hey, tell me about the spot. Where's the reef? Where's the rocks? Where's where not to go? What to do?
Mm-hmm.
When I first started kiting, I would take watermelons with me to the kite spot. And when I'd come off the water, I'd slice up the watermelon into 50 pieces, and I'd walk around and I'd hand out watermelons just to start conversation with people. And then, especially because kiting is a gear, can be gear heavy, depending if you're a real tech guy.
Yeah.
You have so many questions. Hey, how do you like that Nash kite? How do you like it? What do you think of 4 fins, 3 fins? What do you think of this? So that just naturally gets kite talk going. And kiting itself is such a technical sport that there's so much to talk about.
Yeah,
There's
you
so
could
much
just keep
technique.
going and going.
You could kite talk for days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'll be another thing
We'll
one day. The Kite Talks day. Well, Andrea.
Yeah, kiting is technically very.
I don't know if it's cutting out.
Great talk. Good time. I'm
I don't
almost
know
out of
if
battery. 12% left.
Is it cutting out or is me? But in any case, no, it was great. And
A little bit.
I think I am cutting out. 1, 2, 3. Can you see me? Is it there? Now it's good.
We're both on Dominican Wi-Fi, so there's.
I don't know if it's cutting out. Wait, can you hear me now?
It comes and goes. You're freezing a little bit.
Now.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, you're cutting in and out. That's for sure.
All right, so it might be my internet.
Now.
Okay, I think I see you now. I see you now. Is it back to normal?
Okay. Yeah, you're pretty frozen-ish. You're going back and forth. Do I come in clearly?
You're coming in clearly.
We will say goodbye.
Yeah. This was going to happen here, I think. Yo, Andreas, it was a great talk. It was a pleasure. And I think this is like a calling, because the internet's just glitching out all of a sudden. So I don't know if it's you or me. Maybe now it's okay. You look like it's okay.
The internet's what?
It's glitching out.
The internet telling us we got to hang up.
That's what I think it's saying almost.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's.
Norte isn't what it used to be.
I don't know if there's anything you want to plug in, how people could find you, how people can. UnchartedKiteSessions.com.
UnchartedKiteSessions.com.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if that recorded.
Everything's recorded.
Simple as that. UnchartedKiteSessions.com, and find me. I have a phone number. You can WhatsApp me. Yeah, you can send me an email, a WhatsApp. Call me. I'll answer the phone. And come down and become a better kiter and enjoy the Dominican experience, because the Dominican Republic is hands down one of the best waterman places in the world. There are some places definitely in the world that, Cape Town gets windy as can be for 2-3 months of the year, but the rest of the year it doesn't have what we have. Whereas Dominican Republic, it's windy, it's wavy, it's crystal clear waters, and it's direct flight for a lot of places.
That is true. No, it's a unique spot, and it just comes to show if you came here 35 years ago in 1985, then there might be something here.
Oh, I travel for a living for kite surfing, and there are some spots that are really good and have, like I say, a good point break or this or that, but the north coast of the Dominican Republic is hard to beat anywhere in the world. So
I wish more people
for
come to
sure,
see it
especially
in a
when
way.
different things light up at different times. When wave season, huh?
Now, I wish more people come to visit, like it's a good trip to do. And it's not for everyone, but it is
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
Yeah, if you're an adventurous person and you don't need to be pampered and have servants follow you around, and you're just a true, natural, authentic person, north coast of the Dominican Republic is the place for you.
Yeah. Well, with all that said, Andreas, thanks again.
All right,
Hopefully see you in the water soon. I've been winging a lot. I haven't been
no
kite.
problem. Nice
I
talking,
got a new
Charlie.
foil, and but I'm gonna be out there foiling in the lighter days, and then I'm gonna be winging most of the other days. I got some new gear in, so I'm excited. I was testing it yesterday, and it's good.
Oh, I'm gonna try the wing soon. I'm gonna
You
try the
have
wing soon.
to.
It's next on my list. I spend a lot of time foiling, a lot of time coaching, but next on the more gear to buy. I got myself a garage, so now I have finally more room to put more gear in.
Yeah. No, it comes down to space in the end now. It's just you need space to hold all the toys because if you don't have space, it's like chaos.
Yeah, so much space.
But alrighty. So we'll end it here
Yeah, see my
and
front entrance. All right.
appreciate it and have a good one. Peace
You
out.
too. Take care, Charlie.
Bye.